The full moon that rose last night in Sagittarius, on May 31st, at its exact peak, is still fully illuminated as you watch this. And something it set in motion is still in motion. The planetary conditions that were allowing someone to maintain their silence with something like comfort have expired. What held the distance in place no longer has what it needed to hold. This did not happen gradually. It happened at the moment the moon reached fullness, and the field has not returned to the way it was before. You can feel this, not as a wish you are projecting outward, but as something arriving in your direction that your body recognized before your mind had a word for it. Your hands, or your shoulders, or the back of your neck, somewhere in the body that isn't your chest. You have been holding something very quietly for a long time. Not loudly, not dramatically, just present. A low, steady awareness of someone or something unresolved that never fully left, even on the days when you were certain you would let it go. That feeling is not weakness. That is intelligence. And tonight, under this full moon, the source of that signal is experiencing something they have never allowed themselves to feel this completely before. You didn't find this by accident. Something brought you here tonight. Not the algorithm, not a random click. Your soul knew this transmission was ready, and it navigated you toward it with the precision it always uses. Before we go deeper, anchor yourself into this moment. Like this video, subscribe, and comment below. I am ready to receive. Not for anyone reading, for you, as proof to yourself that you showed up for what was already on its way. Because what comes next is the part most people are never told. And once you hear it, it will make sense of everything, including the silence. Here is what this full moon is actually doing right now. It is removing the last planetary conditions that were holding someone's honesty in place. That sentence deserves a second. What held the distance wasn't cruelty. It wasn't indifference. It was something more complex, a web of internal readiness that had not yet reached its completion on their side of things. Tonight, that web has come apart, not gradually, all at once. The way certain internal structures don't erode over time but simply stop holding, and then they are gone. You have been doing something very specific across the months, maybe the years that this has been unresolved. You have been keeping contact with it, not performing it publicly, not using the unresolved thing as a story to tell other people, just staying in honest contact with something real, even on the days when staying honest about it would have been easier as a closed chapter than as an open one. The moments when you could have let it become smaller, filed it away under the heading of things that didn't work out, given it a simpler explanation, moved on in the way that looks like moving on from the outside. You chose not to do that, not loudly, not as a declaration, just a quiet internal refusal to reduce what was genuinely complex into something easier to carry. That refusal is a credential. It is not romantic stubbornness. It is a form of integrity, staying honest about what something actually is, even when the honest version is harder to hold than the simplified one. This door is not opening for everyone tonight. It is opening for the people who kept choosing the harder truth over the more convenient story. You are one of those people. That is why you are here. And that is why tonight is different from every other night you have felt something similar. The full moon in Sagittarius is not just a beautiful sky event. It is a specific kind of planetary force, and understanding what it does will help you understand exactly why tonight is unlike the nights that came before it. The moon governs everything beneath the surface of how you present yourself to the world. It is the part of you that only shows in unguarded moments, what arrives in the body when someone's name appears unexpectedly, what rises in the quiet after a long day, what you feel before the thinking mind has organized it into something speakable. When the moon reaches its fullest point, those interior experiences get louder. The things you have been keeping at a manageable distance come forward. The things you have been almost ready to acknowledge become impossible to keep at arm's length. Not symbolically, physically. The body starts responding to what it has been carrying, and the response is no longer containable. Sagittarius is the sign of honesty that cannot stay contained. It is the part of the zodiac that governs the specific discomfort of knowing something true and not yet having the courage to say it. It rules the archer, someone who has been drawing the bow back, holding the tension, not yet releasing because the moment of release requires them to commit completely and irreversibly to where they are aiming. Sagittarius is that held tension. It is the feeling of something true that is getting too heavy to keep pulled back. And tonight, as the moon reaches its absolute fullness in this sign, that tension is releasing. In both of you, but particularly in the person who has been doing the holding. The combination of these two forces, the moon's peak illumination and Sagittarius's compulsive honesty, creates something specific in the emotional field tonight. It is not a vague openness or a general feeling of possibility. It is the collapse of a specific internal position. The position of, I know what I feel, and I am choosing not to act on it. That position requires energy to maintain, and tonight, that energy has run out. Mercury, entering Cancer today, layers something else onto this. Mercury governs what gets spoken, what gets communicated, what moves from the interior into the shared space between two people. Cancer is the sign of emotional memory. It is where the feelings that never got words finally start to find them. Mercury crossing into Cancer today means that the specific combination of thought and feeling and language is being activated. The barriers between what someone has been carrying inside and what they are capable of saying out loud are thinner tonight than they have been in months. There is one more layer to name tonight, and it matters specifically for you. The full moon is not a solitary event in the sky. It is an opposition. The sun and the moon on opposite sides of the earth pulling in two directions simultaneously. The sun right now is in Gemini, the sign of the mind, of logic, of communication, of the part of the self that sorts and organizes and makes rational sense of things. The full moon in Sagittarius is the gut pulling against the head, the deeper knowing pulling against the explanation, the truth that lives below articulation, pulling against every reasonable story someone has constructed about why they should stay silent. When the moon reaches fullness in the sign directly opposite the sun, it illuminates exactly what the rational mind has been obscuring. And what was obscured, in this case, was never a mystery to anyone who knows how to feel. This is not wishful thinking. This is what these transits actually do to human beings. This portal does not open for everyone who wants it to. Wanting resolution is not the same as having built the internal readiness for it. The people for whom tonight is genuinely different are the ones who did something very specific during the silence. They did not simply survive it. They used it. Not strategically, not with a plan, but honestly. They took the time that was given to them and, often without realizing it, they did the kind of internal work that cannot be performed for an audience. The kind that happens in the gap between going to sleep and actually sleeping. The kind that happens mid-sentence when you realize you are explaining something to someone and the explanation no longer fits what you actually believe. You were at a fork more than once during this waiting period. And at that fork, one direction was significantly easier. It had social permission behind it. It had the support of everyone around you who wanted you to stop hurting and move on. It had the comfort of not having to feel this anymore. You could have gone that way. Many people did. It would have been completely understandable. And something in you, something quiet, something not particularly dramatic, chose the other direction. Not because you were certain it was right, because dropping the thing would have required you to be dishonest about what it actually was, and something in you could not do that. That was not love failing. That was love being honest. The silence was not you being unworthy of receiving. It was them being unready to give. And the waiting was not the universe withholding. It was the universe building something in you that could not have been built any other way. The person who arrives at this portal tonight is not someone who fought their way here. They are someone who kept showing up to an honest internal accounting of something real, day after day, even when the accounting produced no resolution. Even when keeping the account open cost them something: social credibility, the relief of a clean story, the peace of having officially moved on. They paid that cost without being given a receipt. And the receipt is tonight. Where it once felt like being left behind, it now reveals itself as being made ready. Where it once looked like time wasted on something that went nowhere, it shows itself now as the specific price of understanding something deeply enough to receive it correctly when it finally arrives. What you built during those months, an honest relationship with your own interior, a refusal to simplify what was genuinely complex, that is what put you on the other side of this door. There is something important to understand about why this didn't arrive sooner. 6 months ago, a year ago, if this had moved then, you would have given everything for a fraction in return. The partial presence would have been enough. You would have called it love, because your longing was still louder than your discernment. You would have folded back into the familiar shape of the dynamic, not because you were weak, but because the part of you that knew what you actually deserved had not yet become louder than the part that just wanted the feeling of closeness back. You would have received what was offered and spent the following year trying to make a half connection whole. And you would have done it beautifully and exhaustingly, and it would not have worked. The delay protected you from that version of the story, not because the universe was testing your patience, because the version of you who would have received this 6 months ago could not have received it correctly, could not have stayed yourself inside it, could not have remained legible to yourself while being pulled back into a familiar orbit. The delay was not the distance between you and what you wanted. The delay was the construction of the version of you who can actually hold what this is, if it is real, without disappearing into it, without needing it to complete you, without collapsing the space between yourself and another person into something that looks like love, but functions like merger. Stay with this for a moment. The delay did not happen to you. It happened for you. And more specifically, it happened through you. Not through passive waiting, through the active, ongoing choice to stay honest about what this was instead of filing it under something smaller. Saturn governs these timelines, and Saturn does not open doors based on how long someone has waited. It opens them based on whether both people are genuinely ready. Not emotionally ready in the sense of feeling good about it, but ready in the sense of having done the actual interior work that makes a real connection possible, rather than a repetition of an old one. The question Saturn always asks is not, how long? It is, have you actually changed, or have you just missed the feeling? There is a difference between those two things that only time and honesty can clarify. Missing the feeling is powerful. It can look exactly like readiness from the inside. But missing the feeling without having changed what made the dynamic difficult in the first place only produces the same dynamic again, perhaps in softer language, perhaps with more awareness of what's happening, but structurally identical at the level that actually matters. Saturn knows the difference. The body knows the difference. And deep down, so do you. The answer that opens the door is not a feeling. It is something you have been building for months without knowing what it was for. That building is complete. Not because a date arrived, because you are genuinely different from the person you were when this began. Right now, on the other side of this silence, someone is sitting at the edge of something they have been sitting at the edge of for a long time. This is not someone who suppressed what they feel and moved on successfully. This is not someone who rationalized their way into a position of comfort and has been fine there. The person connected to you in this window is someone who has known, for longer than is comfortable to admit, exactly where they stand. The feeling is not ambiguous to them. What has been holding them is not a lack of clarity about what they feel. It is the full weight of what honesty would require them to admit and change and be responsible for. They have been sitting at the edge of that honesty, not pulling away from it, not building new defenses, just sitting with it. In the way someone sits with the decision that has already been made inside them, but has not yet been made into something they have to act on. There is a specific internal geography to this position. It is not the same as peace. It is not the same as unresolved longing. It is quieter than longing and more destabilizing than peace. Tonight is different, and they know it. Not in an abstract spiritual sense, in the specific physical sense of having woken up this morning already different. The feeling they have been holding at the edge reached some kind of internal threshold overnight, and the threshold shifted. What was held at a distance by a very precise application of will is no longer being held at a distance. The will is still there. The distance is not. Here is what it feels like in their body right now. There is something they keep returning to, not thoughts about a situation, a specific presence. You, specifically. The quality of you. The particular way you saw things they showed no one else. A memory that arrives not as a montage, but as a single, very specific moment. Something small and exact that is arriving more frequently and with more insistence than it ever has before. Every time they redirect their attention, it takes slightly longer to redirect. Every distraction holds slightly less weight. They have been almost ready for some time. Tonight, the almost is gone. The full moon in Sagittarius has removed the last supportable reason for remaining at the edge. Sagittarius does not permit indefinite hovering. It eventually demands honesty, not because honesty is comfortable, but because the discomfort of the tension becomes greater than the discomfort of the leap. They have reached that point. The specific transit of Mercury into Cancer today has made the emotional to verbal pathway more open than it has been in months. The thing that lives in their interior as a felt truth is now closer to the surface than it has been since this all began. Do not mistake this for certainty about what they will do. This is not a prediction of contact. This is a description of what is alive in them right now. The recognition is active. The feeling is no longer manageable by their usual methods, and what they do with it belongs to them. They know. They have always known. Today is the day the knowing became too heavy to carry quietly. You are standing between two different internal experiences right now. They can look almost identical from the outside. The difference is entirely interior, and it is everything. This is the moment the work either was real or it wasn't. Not as a verdict, as a revelation. One experience is familiar. You know it in your body from years of practice. The quality of managing. It lives in the background, always running. The part of the mind that is already anticipating the next thing, already building the contingency, already preparing a version of yourself that can handle whatever the situation requires. It is not dramatic. It is just present. A low, constant hum of readiness for an outcome you are trying not to need while simultaneously trying to steer. The jaw is slightly more engaged than necessary. Thought moves faster than the situation actually requires. There is a narrowing, as if the space of possibility is getting smaller, needing to be corralled into something manageable. The other experience is less familiar. It does not announce itself as courage or wisdom. It arrives as a kind of absence, the absence of the hum. A quality of stillness that is not indifference, not giving up, not numbing, something different. The sensation of having genuinely set a weight down, not temporarily, not as a strategy, because it no longer needs to be carried. The shoulders are not held forward. The thought does not accelerate. The space does not narrow. It does the opposite. It opens. without anything having arrived, without any signal from outside confirming that the opening is warranted. The distinction is directional. One is organized around managing an outcome. The other has stopped needing to manage it. Most people in this situation mistake the managing for care, as if releasing the grip means releasing the love. It does not. The love does not live inside the grip. It lives below it, and it becomes most available, most real, most capable of being received precisely when the grip is gone. This is not the universe withholding. This is the universe waiting to see which version of you steps forward. What has changed, genuinely, at a level that isn't a philosophy you're choosing to adopt tonight, is your relationship to the outcome. Not the desire, not the love, just the need to steer what happens next into the version of resolution the mind has already decided is acceptable. The part of you that required controlling the shape of this in order to feel safe inside it has done its work. It held the line while you were becoming something. That was its job. Its job is finished. The single question that separates these two experiences is not, do I still want this? You know the answer to that. The question is, can you be fully present to what is actually here? What is actually arriving in its actual form at its actual timing, without needing to rewrite it into the version you decided on before it arrived? The answer to that question is already in the body. It arrived before the mind formed the words. Trust what was there first. There is something beneath the surface of this connection that has nothing to do with romance and everything to do with what you came here to learn. Soul contracts are not love stories arranged before birth so that two people can find each other. They are specific agreements about what must be confronted, activated, and fully integrated inside one person, or both, before the meeting can become something real rather than something repetitive. They are not about outcomes. They are about transformation. And the transformation they require is always specific, always precise, and never comfortable in the ways that romantic stories say transformation should be. This specific contract came to teach you something about timing. Not patience in the passive sense, not waiting with grace until the good thing arrives. Something more exacting than that. It came to teach you the difference between love that is real and love that is real but arriving before both people are structurally ready to hold it without damaging it. That difference is not theoretical. You have felt it. The version of this that was available before you were ready would have been real love arriving inside a dynamic that was not yet capable of sustaining what real love actually requires. The love itself was not the problem. The readiness was. Saturn, the planetary force that governs what gets made permanent, enforces soul contracts with a precision that has no sentiment in it. It does not care how much someone suffers. It does not respond to longing. It does not unlock based on the purity of someone's desire. It unlocks when the lesson has been genuinely integrated, not intellectually understood. There is a difference. Understanding the lesson can happen in an afternoon. Integrating it, having it become part of how you actually move through the world, how you actually read situations, how you actually respond inside a moment of genuine contact. That takes the amount of time it takes. No more and no less. Give yourself a full moment here, because the grief of recognizing this is real. The grief of understanding that what looked like being left, or being chosen and then unchosen, or being held at the edge of something that never quite arrived, that all of it had a purpose you could not have chosen to receive. That is a legitimate grief, not a small one. The story you told yourself about what the silence meant, the version where you were not enough, or you missed your window, or you did something wrong, that story is dying tonight. And even when a story is untrue, its dying has weight. Let it. What this connection was always going to deliver was not a person who stayed. It was a version of you who no longer needs them to. That sentence is worth staying with. because it does not mean the love was not real. It does not mean reunion is not possible. It means that the central purpose of the contract, the thing this specific connection was uniquely capable of producing inside you, has now been delivered. Whether they return or not, you are already in possession of what this was always for. The contract did not promise an outcome. It promised a change in who you are. And that promise has already been kept. What comes next, whatever form it takes, arrives in a field that is genuinely different, because you are genuinely different. The love, if it was real, does not require the old dynamic to survive. What was between you before was love inside an unfinished lesson. What is possible from here is love inside a finished one. Those are not the same thing, and only one of them can last. Your body is not confused about this. It is finishing something. There is a quality of settling that has been arriving in your body over the past weeks. Not with announcement, not with fanfare, but in the spaces between things. Sleep that arrives at a different hour than it used to, earlier, quieter, without the low-level processing that used to run through the first hour of lying down. The difference is not dramatic. It is in the quality of what sleep leaves behind. Where it once deposited a thin residue of unfinished thought into the first minutes of waking, it is beginning to leave something cleaner. Eating, moving, sitting in a room, there is a way the body has stopped organizing itself around something that isn't present. The particular micro-tension that lives in the muscles when a person is on a kind of constant low-level alert, the bracing that happens below the level of conscious awareness, is releasing. Not all at once, in sections. The shoulders are settling without being asked. The jaw releases in the middle of ordinary conversations, at moments that have nothing to do with this. Somewhere in the back of the neck, that specific place where unresolved things tend to live, there is less. A name that used to arrive with a physical hook, a tightening somewhere, a shift in breath quality, a rerouting of attention from whatever you were doing to the full weight of what was unresolved, is arriving differently now. Still arriving, still landing somewhere, but no longer pulling the body into a state of readiness around it. The name comes, you register it, and then the moment moves forward. The body does not brace. That is not indifference. That is integration. What used to feel like safety in certain dynamics, the familiar, the predictable, the version of connection that didn't require you to be fully legible, now has a different quality. Like entering a room and realizing immediately it is slightly too small for the dimensions of what you actually are. You are not smaller than you were. The room just stopped hiding its size. Sleep is one signal, but there is another one, quieter. It is in the sensation of being fully inside a moment. Not the moments where everything is good and there is no reason not to be present. The ordinary moments, the unremarkable Tuesday afternoon, the routine errand, the walk between one thing and another. The body is beginning to inhabit those moments with less percentage of itself committed to somewhere else. Less of you is held in reserve for an outcome that hasn't arrived yet. More of you is actually here. This is not the quiet of having given up. This is the quiet of something that has genuinely finished. The body knows the difference, even when the mind is still catching up. And that difference, the body knowing before the mind does, is also changing the quality of what you bring into your daily life now. Decisions that used to take 3 passes are taking 1, not because the situations got simpler, because the internal argument that used to run alongside every decision has gone quiet at its root. The argument was always, at its core, a version of the same question. Am I enough? Is what I want legitimate? Do I deserve to take up this much space? When that question is genuinely answered, not suppressed, not overridden with affirmations, but actually answered at the level of the body's knowing, the decisions that used to run through it come out clean. What used to feel exciting but cost you something in the hours after, a dynamic that gave you energy in the moment and a particular kind of tiredness that wasn't physical, You can now feel that cost before it arrives. The body has learned to run the calculation in advance. Something presents itself, and before the mind has formed an opinion, the body has already quietly indicated whether it fits. Where it once took effort to hold a standard, it now takes effort to understand why it was ever negotiable. The things that used to feel like safety are starting to feel like ceilings. Not with resentment, with clarity. The version of connection that required you to remain slightly smaller than your actual dimensions, to edit your reactions before they arrived, to monitor your own temperature inside a room. That version registers now as incompatible before you have even named what is incompatible about it. The nervous system has updated. What could live here before cannot live here now. Synchronicities are shifting their quality. They are beginning to feel less like nudges toward something and more like confirmations of where you already are. The difference is in the direction of the feeling. One points forward. Go there, that is what you are seeking. The other points inward. Yes, this confirms it. You are already in the right place. That shift in the character of synchronicity is one of the most reliable signals that something has genuinely stabilized inside you. Other people's energy is easier to read accurately now, not because you have become more perceptive, because the distortion of your own unresolved wounds is no longer bending the signal. When a wound is unresolved, everything that resembles the wound looks like a repetition of it. The person in front of you doesn't just arrive as themselves, they arrive filtered through the question of whether they are going to do the thing the wound was built around. That filter is gone. What arrives now arrives as itself. You can see it clearly. You are not waiting to become someone. The becoming already happened, in private, without announcement, in the exact window where it had to happen to be real. What is here now is not preparation. It is arrival. There is something specific that your nervous system will no longer accommodate, and this is not a decision you made. It is a biological fact about where you are now. Being held at emotional arm's length by someone who knows exactly what they feel, who carries full internal clarity about the connection and chooses to keep you at a distance from that clarity. That is no longer something your system will absorb without registering it immediately as wrong. Not dramatically, not with a reaction, just a clear, physical signal that something is incompatible, arriving before the mind has organized a judgment about it. The way the eye adjusts when it moves from shadow into light, not through decision, not through effort, but as the automatic, involuntary response of something built to perceive what is actually there. The signal arrives that cleanly, that immediately. And at that speed, the assessment is complete before the conversation about whether to act on it has had time to begin. The weight of carrying a connection alone, holding the full emotional reality of something while the other person remains comfortable inside its ambiguity, no longer passes through you the way it once did. Once, you could sustain that imbalance for extended periods. You could carry the certainty for both people and still find ways to make meaning inside it. That capacity has not grown smaller because you gave up. It has grown smaller because you grew. The thing that once fit inside you as an acceptable cost now makes contact with something in you that will not accept it. Quietly. Immediately. Explaining your depth to someone who uses your explanation as evidence that you are too much, you will notice this happening faster now. Not with irritation, with a kind of immediate, tired recognition. Because you know, now, at the level of the body, that depth is not a problem to be solved or a volume to be adjusted. And when someone treats it as such, the recognition is not a thought you arrive at. It is something the body registers first. Waiting for honesty that someone has already decided you don't deserve, this is the one that the new version of you will be least able to sustain. Because honesty is no longer something you experience as a gift someone can withhold. It is something you now understand as the minimum viable condition for genuine contact. Without it, there is no real connection, only the appearance of one. And the appearance once you have known the real thing from the inside, does not satisfy something in you that used to be possible to quiet. You did not close yourself. You clarified. And clarity does not reduce what is possible. It removes what was never going to be real anyway, and makes the remaining space available for what actually is. If this soul, the past life heart the title of tonight names, steps back into your field now, the first thing you will notice is not what they say. It is something beneath what they say, a quality of presence, or an absence of it, that your nervous system will read before your mind has formed an evaluation. You are not waiting for them with held breath. That posture has genuinely left you. What you carry now is something steadier, a grounded capacity to see clearly, without the distortion of hope pulling the signal in one direction or old pain pulling it in the other. The question is not, do I still want this? You know the answer. The question is whether what returns is something genuinely different, a different version of the dynamic, shaped by what they actually changed in themselves, or whether it is the same structure wearing new language. You will know the difference. Not because you are guarded and therefore less susceptible to being fooled, because you are clear. There is a specific quality to genuine transformation in another person that cannot be performed convincingly over time. It lives in the consistency of small moments, in whether their presence is steady or strategic, in whether they are available in the moments that have no audience, no payoff, no significance to anyone watching from outside. Those signals are legible to you now in a way they were not before. Not because you learned to read them, because the noise that used to interfere with your reading has been cleared. If what returns is real, if what comes back is someone who genuinely worked on themselves in the silence, the way you worked on yourself, you will receive it, fully, without the pull to immediately verify it by asking them to prove something. The proof is not in what they say when they return. It is in what they do on the Tuesday after, and the Thursday after that, and in the moment when something is inconvenient, and they choose you anyway. If what returns is the same dynamic wearing the face of change, you will feel that too, immediately. Not with devastation, with a clarity that was not available before, in a version of you that needed the connection to be real so badly that you were willing to interpret ambiguous signals as confirmation. That version of you completed its contract. What receives them now is someone who no longer needs the arrival to confirm something about their own worth. You can receive what arrives accurately for the first time. And if they do not return, if this moon moves through and the silence continues, here is what the non-arrival confirms: that you did the deepest, most irreversible version of this work for yourself. Not for them, not to earn them back. Because the version of you that emerged from this period of honest carrying and internal work is not contingent on any external outcome to be real. The non-return loses nothing you were ever actually holding, because what you built is yours, completely, unconditionally, unrevocably yours. The outcome no longer owns you. Whatever arrives, you receive it from ground that belongs to you. Whatever doesn't, you lose nothing you were ever actually holding. If something in this transmission landed somewhere specific, not just in the mind, but in the body, somewhere below the threshold of thought, do one thing before you move on. Like this video, not as a gesture, as a signal to yourself that you were present for this. Subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. These transmissions build on each other. What opens tonight connects directly to what arrives in the next window. And in the comments, write, "I am already there." Say it out loud as you type it, for your own nervous system. Words spoken with real meaning complete something that silent reading leaves unfinished. And if someone in your life is standing at a threshold they can't quite name, share this with them. Your soul already knows who. The door did not open tonight because the full moon made it possible. It opened because you made yourself ready, across a period of time that required something real of you, and you gave what it asked. What is arriving now has already begun arriving, not with noise, not with announcement, in the quiet way that things which belong to you tend to arrive, already familiar before they fully land, already recognizable before they are fully visible. You don't have to reach for it. You don't have to steer it into the right shape. You only have to remain exactly as steady as you have already learned to be. It is already on its way to you. It always was.